On my recent video about sustainable weight loss, Helen commented, "To get anywhere near a healthy BMI, I have to reduce my calories to around 1500, but I just can't sustain that." Thanks for your comment, Helen. You're not alone in this. Sometimes it can feel like however hard we try, there's a gulf between where our brain wants our body to be and where our body wants to be. Perhaps that ideal weight is just out of our reach, or we can't get past that elusive 11 stone mark, or if we could just lose a few more pounds, we'd be happy. And on the rare occasion we get close to our ideal weight, it's only a matter of time before our body springs back to where it wants to be. So stick with me for the next 20 minutes and I'll explain why so many of us have a constant dissatisfaction with our weight, why our ideal weight goals are often unrealistic, and how you can shift your mindset to finding the ideal weight for you. A weight where you feel strong, you feel healthy, and you feel happy. I'm Dr. Paula Watson. I'm a Liverpool-based psychologist providing therapy for people struggling with weight, disordered eating, and exercise. This is the 7th video in my weight loss psychology series where I'm sharing truth 6 of 10 hard truths that will help you understand why you struggle with weight and help you feel less alone. Please subscribe if you'd like to catch the whole series, and if you haven't yet watched the intro video, I'd encourage you to check it out. The truth I'm talking about today is that most people set themselves unrealistic weight loss goals. So let's start by exploring why everyone wants to lose weight in the first place. A large study done in 2017 by Santos and colleagues looked into the prevalence of people wanting to either lose weight or making a conscious effort to maintain their weight. They pulled together the results of 72 studies done across the world between 1975 and 2013. They found within these studies the prevalence of people trying to either lose weight or prevent weight gain range between 37% and 81.5%. We can see this all around us. Think about the adults in your life. Most people we speak to want to lose a few pounds or say they're trying to be good to watch their weight. And this seems to be the case regardless of how healthy they are. Now, let me be upfront about this. I include myself in this. Whilst I know I'm healthy, I'm active, and I'm happy in my life, there's that little voice in the back of my mind that's on a constant quest to try and get back to the weight I was 5 years ago. And if I'm really honest, there's a little part of me that feels I'm failing because I haven't managed to do it. But I want to be clear. This doesn't mean I think you're a failure if you're struggling with your weight. And I think my clients are failures if they're struggling with their weight. Absolutely the opposite. And this is really important for me to emphasize, particularly given the focus of my previous video in this series, where I talked about how insensitive it can feel when people in smaller bodies say things like this. I'm sharing this to show that even someone like me, who's a healthy weight, has all the education, and who genuinely believes the scales say nothing about who you or I am as a person, it's still really difficult to apply these principles to ourselves. So why is this mindset something that's so hard to shift? We're living in a world where it's hard to escape messages about body size and shape. Social media is filled with images of how to achieve the ideal body. We're given the impression it should be something we can all achieve if only we work a bit harder. And everything from fitness equipment to theatre seats to plane seats are designed for smaller bodies. Coupled with this, we might have been brought up by parents who were always talking about dieting, or perhaps we lived in the 90s where our role models were all size 0. Many of us have internalized messages that being slimmer means we're more disciplined, we're more successful, we're somehow better people. Our logical brain, of course, can see this is total rubbish. But our emotional brain, that's much harder to convince. So let's consider why the weight goals we set are often unrealistic. When I ask clients if they have an ideal weight in mind, they often give me the lightest weight they ever were. Or perhaps they've worked out what a healthy weight would be for their height using a BMI calculator. So I'm going to explain a bit more about this in a minute. In both these cases, it's likely the desired weight is unrealistic for the individual. Why? There's 4 things our brain seems to ignore when we're setting our weight goals. Firstly, something called the set point hypothesis. Secondly, the fact body mass index or BMI is flawed. Thirdly, the fact weight is influenced by so many factors we can't control. And fourthly, when we look back at photos of when we looked our best, we're often ignoring key facts about that situation. So let's go through these one by one. The first thing is something called the set point hypothesis. This is the notion that our body has an inbuilt system designed to maintain our weight within a certain range. This range is different for everybody. And when we're within this range, things feel right for us. And I don't mean in terms of how we look. I mean, we're able to maintain that weight with relatively little effort. We're able to enjoy our food, exercise regularly, and we feel physically and mentally well. When we try and control our weight through restricting our calorie intake, our body responds by slowing our metabolism to protect our energy stores and to try and bring us back to the set point that feels natural. And if you've ever finally got under that elusive 11, 12 or 13 stone mark, but you find you just can't maintain it, you can probably relate to this. Your body's bouncing back to a more comfortable place it wants to be. And this is particularly the case for large calorie restrictions or where you've lost weight rapidly, because the body thinks we're going into starvation mode and does all it can to retain the fat we have. Now, as I noted before, this set point is different for everybody. And you can see this. If you imagine a group of healthy people, just as some of them are built to be much taller than others, some are naturally built to be much heavier than others. So the set point might also change during our lives with biological changes, like due to age, hormones, or illness. So perhaps the healthiest weight for me now, as a 48-year-old woman who does Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, I run, I strength train, is different from my healthiest weight 10 years ago when I was obviously younger, but also my lifestyle was different. So what does this mean for setting weight goals? It means A, biological factors make it very difficult to lose a large amount of weight and keep it off. But this doesn't mean we can't lose weight at all. If you're living with overweight or obesity, a more realistic target can be to aim for 5 to 10% of your starting weight. So if you weigh 100 kilos now, this would mean dropping to 90 to 95 kilos. This may not sound much, but it's enough that you would feel the difference in your body, your energy, and your well-being. And importantly, research shows even with this small amount of weight loss, people still see significant improvements in the health markers like lower blood pressure, lower risk of diabetes, reduced cholesterol. Remember, it's far healthier for you to lose 5% of your body weight and keep it off forever than it is to yo-yo diet throughout your life. B, whilst we can control what we eat and how active we are, we can't directly control how our weight's responding. So instead of focusing on weight goals, focus on the aspects you can control, like establishing a regular exercise routine, eating a balanced diet, and your weight will then stabilize itself. C, what's an ideal weight for you will likely be different from an ideal weight for me. And if you've struggled with your weight for a long time, perhaps been through periods of yo-yo dieting, you've lost weight, you've regained it, you likely haven't had a chance to experience what maintaining your weight where it naturally wants to be feels like. So don't worry if you don't know right now what the ideal weight is for you. The second thing our brain seems to ignore when setting weight goals is the fact that body mass index, or BMI, is flawed in so many ways. Firstly, as noted in my previous point, natural weights vary hugely on the individual level, so applying one set of BMI criteria to everyone makes no sense. Secondly, BMI doesn't take into account our body composition, so it doesn't consider how much muscle we have and how much fat we have. So let's illustrate this with an example. BMI is calculated by dividing our weight in kilograms by our height in meters squared. You don't need to do the math yourself. You can go onto the NHS website and there's a calculator to do it for you. Now, I'm pleased to see the NHS are pointing out that if you have an eating disorder or suspect you do, you shouldn't use this tool. I'm going to run through a hypothetical example for, let's say, a female athlete who does a lot of sport and eats a healthy, balanced diet. So, yes, I'm 18 or over. What's my height? Let's give them an average height of 163 centimetres. How much do you weigh? Let's give them a weight of 68 kilos, which is about 150 pounds. What's my ethnic background? Let's imagine they're black. Now, the reason it asks this is that we know there are differences in health risk for different ethnic groups, so the website will tailor advice for your ethnicity. Okay, so calculate. My BMI is 25.6 and it tells me that this hypothetical person is in the overweight category. Then if you scroll down, it suggests they could benefit from making some healthy changes. And here you see the fundamental problem. The athlete in the example has a high amount of muscle due to the amount of training they do. And as muscle weighs more than fat and is much denser, so 1 pound of muscle would take up much less space than 1 pound of fat. So this athlete may be heavier than someone who actually looks from the outside to be fatter than they do. And despite having a BMI that's technically classed as overweight, they're healthy, they're strong, and this weight is right for them. Conversely, you could get someone who sits on the couch and eats ultra-processed foods all day, has very little muscle, but has a naturally lower weight set point, so is told by the BMI calculator that they're healthy. The BMI cutoffs were designed to make large-scale predictions about the population. But for the reasons I've explained, what's considered a healthy weight at population level doesn't work to predict what's a healthy weight for you. So even if your BMI is outside of the so-called healthy window, if you're eating a nutritionally balanced diet and you're physically active, you are much healthier than somebody whose BMI is in the healthy window but eats terribly and sits on the couch all day. The other thing to add here is that we can often worry about extra fat layers that we can see or pinch. This is fat that lies just under the surface, which we call subcutaneous fat. But this often isn't the largest concern for our physical health. The more worrying type of fat is hidden inside and wrapped around our organs, which we call visceral fat, and is more concerning for health. So a good marker to assess this kind of fat is by measuring your waist in comparison to your height. I've linked to a British Heart Foundation article below if you'd like to learn more about that. So what does this all mean for setting weight goals? It means that A, BMI is an unreliable marker for determining a healthy weight for us as an individual. B, we can tell very little by looking at someone in terms of what activity they do, what their diet looks like, or what their weight is. Two individuals could have exactly the same lifestyle, but this reflects differently in their body and shape. Equally, two individuals could have exactly the same BMI, but look totally different. C, markers such as how our clothes fit or measuring our waist are a much better way of telling whether our body composition has changed over time. The third thing our brains tend to ignore is that our physical makeup, including our weight, is influenced by many factors we can't control. On the one hand, there's the things we're given, the things we can't control and we can't change. So we're given our bone structure, we're given our basic shape, our tendency to gain fat and muscle in certain areas. We're given our breast size, our skin tone, our inherited fitness, our inherited disease risk. And all these things will differ with age, hormones, sex, ethnicity. But there are some things we can control, at least to some extent. These include our muscle strength and size, how strong our bones are, how much fat is stored, but not where it's stored, functioning of our internal organs, and our future disease risk. So if we look at the majority of factors that influence our weight and shape, many of these are outside of our control. Why then do we continue to blame ourselves for not doing well enough with our weight? Through healthy movement and how we eat, we can build muscle and lose fat. But I'm afraid it's not up to us where we lose that fat from. So the more focused we are on just losing that belly fat, the more we're going to become frustrated by our lack of progress. And what does this mean for setting weight goals? It means that A, we need to move away from using weight as a judgment for our health and instead focus on strength, fitness, and factors we can control. B, we need to accept that for most of us, a life that's happy, healthy, and balanced may never be the same life where we have a visible six-pack. The fourth thing our brains continuously do is to rose tint what we remember. When you're striving to achieve your lightest weight ever, have you ever stopped to think about how unrepresentative the photos you're comparing yourself with are? Most of us have favourite photos of ourselves when perhaps we've made an effort for the day, we've put on our best clothes, done our hair and makeup. And if you've been a yo-yo dieter, you might even have been dieting for months to look good on that day. People often say, I weighed this amount on my wedding day, or I felt great on that holiday. But what we don't remind ourselves of is I had no responsibilities back then. I had the metabolism of a 20-year-old then, or I was on a miserable diet and starved myself for 3 months leading up to that photograph. So the point is, we may be comparing ourselves with an image that resulted from putting our life on hold for weeks or months just so we could look good in the photos. If we only ever save the good photos, we never have a true picture of how things have looked all the time, not just on the rose-tinted days. And if it wasn't sustainable back then, given we're now 20 years older with a different lifestyle and responsibilities, it's probably even less sustainable now. So what does this mean for setting weight goals? A, we need to be honest with ourselves. Was our lightest weight really the time we felt healthiest, happiest, and most able to sustain our weight without effort? Remember my first point about individual set points? Our lightest weight isn't necessarily and often isn't our healthiest weight. B, we need to accept the weight that is right for us now may be different from the weight that was right for us 20 years ago. And we need to consider what we want our lifestyle to look like today. What works for us with our current responsibilities, preferences, and goals. And accept this may mean a different body shape and size than the one we strove for 20 years ago. So we've discussed 4 things our brains ignore when setting weight goals. The set point hypothesis, the problems with BMI, all the non-controllable factors that influence our weight, and our conveniently selective memories. But by continuing to ignore these factors, we're keeping ourselves in a place of perpetual dissatisfaction, essentially about something that we've got very little control over. So let's finish with some practical tips for making your weight goals more realistic. If you're still watching, hopefully this is because the points I made make some sense to you, or at least to your logical brain. But perhaps you're still wondering, how do I actually find the right weight for me and put this stuff into practice? So I'm going to share 3 practical steps you can take to start changing your mindset around weight today. But I also want to remind you, it takes time for our emotional brain to catch up. So be kind to yourself in this process. If you've had an ideal weight in your mind for 10, 20, 30 years, it's not going to suddenly disappear overnight. But you can start noticing those thoughts, and rather than letting them control you, just let them be there and continue day to day working towards how you'd like to be. Step 1 is to ditch the weight goal. This doesn't necessarily mean avoiding the scales entirely though, but it means no longer letting them control you. What I actually recommend for people who've been obsessed with the scales for a long time isn't to stop weighing entirely, because you'll likely find that you feel so anxious that one day the bubble's going to burst. Instead, I recommend using the scales as a learning tool rather than a judgment tool. This is quite a mindset shift and sometimes difficult to do without support. So I've put a link to my video about weekly weighing, which explains how you can get started and try it yourself at home. Step 2 is to replace that weight goal with goals around enjoyable, balanced eating and being regularly active. So essentially, put your lifestyle first and let your weight do its thing. If you focus on moving and eating to be strong, healthy and happy and not looking a certain way, if you do this consistently, over time your weight will stabilize at a place that's right for you. And if you want to learn more about how to do this, check out my sustainable weight loss video. Step 3 is to accept what you can't control. This may start with acknowledging that things are different now than they were 20 years ago. This may be about learning to accept your body as it is, without weight loss being the focus. Paradoxically, once you do this, and instead focus on creating a lifestyle that's enjoyable and sustainable for you, you'll give your body space to discover your natural weight. My video about stopping hating your body might provide a starting point with this. Thank you for watching this video. If what I've shared resonates, please like or comment below and let me know which of these 4 points feel truest for you. And if you're struggling, it can be difficult to change things alone. I offer psychological weight loss therapy, which can help with many of the issues we've talked about today. So if you're ready to take this step, drop me an email for a free discovery chat. And if you enjoyed the video, please subscribe to catch the next in my weight loss psychology series, where we'll be talking about confidence, why it matters in weight loss, and how we can build belief in ourselves.